everybody. It is Anne. Today is Friday, the 7th of December, 2018. This is going to be a kind of standalone video. I had promised several folks that I would do one just centered on the books that I'll be reading for the 2019 Around the World in 52 Books Challenge, which is hosted over on Goodreads. I will put a link to that challenge, the group, and the post that specifically lists all of the topics down below so you guys can check that out. There's no other crafts or other things in this video, so if you're here for that, that'll happen in another week. This is just going to be about books. So I've mentioned before in some of my other videos that I believe this is going to be year 5 that I've participated in the Around the World in 52 Books Challenge. This was originally started by a woman and her boyfriend that they wanted to kind of have an impromptu reading group or reading club with the two of them to sort of challenge each other to read topics that maybe they wouldn't have picked up otherwise. And it just kind of grew. I mean, I think the group now has over 5,000 people in it, close to 6,000 people, maybe more. It's been really popular. And one of the things that I've really enjoyed about it is the fact that while I am a big reader, just in general, I read a lot, I was finding that I was kind of getting stuck in genre ruts, or I'd go down some rabbit hole of books and then that would be all I would read is that type of book, and then I would get really burned out on it. So the challenges the last years have been great. They've opened the lists for the topics up to a vote. So they've had a lot of group participation to choose topics, and I think that's helped keep it fresh and keep it new. Certainly, if there are any of the topics that you absolutely hate, you can always wildcard a book in. I mean, there's no reading police for this. Read what you like. But that is one of the things that I've liked about the challenge, which is that there's usually enough flexibility within the prompts that you can pick something that you would still want to read. It isn't like read a biology textbook. It might be read a book on science, but there's all kinds of things. You know, if you like nonfiction, you can read nonfiction. If you like fiction, you can read fiction. If you like, you know, creepy sci-fi kind of science, you can read that. There's all kinds of personal choice. And to be really honest, I have wound up finding every year I find a book that I picked just because it filled a topic, and I was like, well, whatever, I have to fill a topic. I'm going to read this, you know. Read the book cover and thought, yeah, okay, it'll be fine. And then it wound up being like my sleeper hit of the year, where I found a book that is kind of in my top 100 books of a lifetime, or top 10 books for that decade, or top 1 or 2 books for that year. So that's been an amazing gift as far as I'm concerned, because, you know, sometimes I pick book titles thinking I will love them and I don't. And so to find ones completely unexpected, it's like getting a birthday and holiday present all wrapped up in one totally unexpectedly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through each of the topics. I'm going to talk to you guys about the book title and author for the topic I've chosen, and I will put together, I haven't decided the best way to do this. I think to cut and paste all those links is going to make me crazy, so I think I'm going to do a Word document, and then if anybody would like that, I'll try to convert it to Google Docs and put the link to that below so you guys can find it, so you guys can read it, so you guys can contribute to it if you want. I'm sorry, my husband's traveling today, so he's just letting me know that he's made it back to the United States. So, sorry about that. I'm all about the interruptions, apparently, when I record this week. Okay, I do have a few books in print. If I have the hard copy, I have a stack over here. If I have the hard copy, I will show you the cover of that. Otherwise, like I said, I'll try to just put the Goodreads link to each of the topics on a document and then put a link to that up so that you guys can see it. If there's any topics that you guys think are great ones that you have the perfect book suggestion for, please let me know. I'm not necessarily sold on anything. These are just ones that I've selected so far that I think I would like. And full disclaimer, there's quite a bit of my usual sort of fantasy historical fiction because that's what I like. Okay, so let's get started. There are 52 topics, obviously, around the world in 52 books. So the first one is a book nominated or a book which was nominated or which won an award in a genre I enjoy. So I'm kicking the year off with the book called Dreams Underfoot by Charles DeLint. It's actually the first in his Newford series, which I have not read. I have not read this particular book. I've read other books in the Newford series and love his writing. So I'm going to kick the year off with that. The next topic is a book with one of the 5 W's in the title. So who, what, when, where, why. Yeah. So I picked the title, The Man Who Listens to Horses, written by Monty Roberts. Y'all know I love horses. I love reading about different training methods, I guess. Monty Roberts is kind of the person, one of 2 people who kind of kicked off the whole horse whisperer concept. So I've read some other books in this same vein, but I'm interested to read his take on it. It's nonfiction and talks a bit about his life, but also about his training philosophy. So I'm going to tackle that. Next, a book with in which the author's name has an A, a T, and a Y in it. So I picked the book called The American Boy. The author's name is Andrew Taylor. This is a book set in England in 1819, and the main character is a tutor to an American boy who turns out to be Edgar Allan Poe. So it's about Poe's younger years and his relationship with his mother. Next up, this is a book that contains a criminal character. So somebody who's a thief or a murderer or some other shady character. So I am reading a fantasy book called The Shadow of the Torturer by Gene Wolfe. Recommended to me by a friend. We'll see how it is. Not all of these do I have a lot of substantive information to give you about them because obviously I haven't read any of them yet, but you can read all of the blurbs on Goodreads. Next up, a book inspired by or written by Shakespeare. So I opted not to do anything that was actually written by Shakespeare. I had 4 college-level classes on Shakespeare, one on the sonnets, one on the comedies, one on the tragedies, and one on the histories. So I haven't read everything by Shakespeare, but it's pretty darn close. So I opted for a book called Sleep of Death. The author's name is Philip Gooden, and it is a Elizabethan mystery set in the time of Shakespeare. Next is a book with a dual timeline. This one looked interesting. It's called The Light in the Ruins. The author is, hope I say this right, Chris Bojalian, maybe? Anyway, set in Europe, and I thought it was interesting because the dual timelines aren't like 19th century and contemporary. They're like turn of the century in 1954. So like just before the First World War, just after the Second World War. So I thought that might be an interesting juxtaposition. We'll find out. Next up, so for topics 7 and 8, it's actually two books that are related in some way to topic, genre, or theme. So I picked the first book I'll get as an ebook called A Matter of Circumstance and Celludrones by Claire Robbins, which is a steampunk kind of adventure with a feisty heroine. And the other book is one my dad sent me called The Necromancer, which is by Jonas Cabal. So this is a charmingly gothic, fiendishly funny Faustian tale, say that 3 times fast, about a brilliant scientist who makes a deal with the devil twice. And it has steampunkish elements in it, so yeah, thought that was a good choice. So got that one. All right, topic number 9 is a choice from one of the 5 top genres. So the choices were romance and erotica, crime and mystery, science fiction or fantasy. I can't remember what the other 2 were because I didn't write them down. Helpful. Anyway, I have gone with The Lies of Locke Lamora, which is definitely like a sci-fi fantasy book. The author is Scott Lind. Next up is a book featuring a historical figure, and I went a little different this time. I had a lot of choices, and I thought, oh, I'll probably do historical fiction, but I opted for Prague Winter by Madeleine Albright. So this is her autobiography. It's mostly set when she was a child, so 1937 to 1948. And it talks about her family who were Czechs and growing up during the time of World War II, and the fact that she was not even aware that her family was Jewish for a while. So my parents both read this book and both really enjoyed it. They just got back from a tour that included Prague. So anyway, this sounded really interesting and a little bit different than I would normally read, so I thought I would give this a shot for that topic. Next is a book related to one of the Chinese zodiac animals, and I picked the horse. No one is surprised by this, are they, really? But I'm going with a fantasy book, one of Guy Gavriel Kay's writings that's sort of a retelling of, he sort of does fantastical retellings of actual history, and this one's called Under Heaven, and that looks really good, so that's my choice for that. Next, a book about reading, books, or writers, and this was a hard one to narrow down because there's tons of books on books. But this one's called The Thorn and the Blossom by Theodora Goss. Next up, this one was kind of interesting. It was the topic is a book chosen for the staff picks list from the New York Public Library. Wow, that is varied. It's a very varied list. The book I picked, again, something that was like a little outside my genre that I normally gravitate towards, called The Blazing World by Siri Hustvedt. We'll see. I mean, all of these we'll see, right? It's going to be good. Week 14, a title or subtitle that's related to an astronomical term. So I picked Under the Wild and Starry Sky, which is historical fiction by Nancy Horan. Week 15 is a book where the author is from, or the book is set in a Mediterranean setting. And I don't have one nailed down for this yet. I have 2 options that I'm looking at, and I haven't decided on that. So if somebody has a book that's absolutely brilliant that fits that topic and want to share it with me, please leave that in the comments. I will take those under advisement. A book with multiple perspectives. I opted for a sort of feisty heroine fantasy called The Steel Queen by Karen Azinger. That looked interesting. Speculative fiction is week 17, and I picked The Blue Sword by Robin McKinley because that also looked good. That one's been around for a while. It's not a very new book, but 18, week 18 is a book related to an element on the periodic table. So I opted for Spinning Silver by Naomi Novik, which is sort of a retelling of a fairy tale, but not exactly. This is brand new this year. It's a 2018 release. I read for my very first book of 2018, her previous book. Now I can't remember the name of it, but it's a retelling of the Rumpelstiltskin fairy tale. So right up my alley. Hoping I will like that one. Week 19, an author with more than one book on my to-be-read list. So I'm going with Stephanie Barron. You might recognize her name. She is the author of a whole bunch of Jane and the blah, 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 fill in the blank. They're fiction mysteries in which Jane Austen, the author, is the heroine and solves mysteries. And I think she's written 9 of them. And I have all of them in my to-be-read list. So I'm up to number 6 in the series, which is Jane and the Prisoner of the Wool House. So that's what I popped in for that. Week 20 is a book on the that features the indigenous people of a country. So I'm going with a book called Painted Horse by Catherine Kincaid, which is set here in the United States. And while the main character isn't Native American, it's a story about this young man whose family is killed and he's adopted by Apache. And he learns to be a warrior and is kind of assimilated into all of the war tribe traditions that the Apache have. So that one looked pretty interesting. I thought I would give that a go. Okay, so number 21, you are to pick a book that was from one of the polarizing or close call votes, meaning one of the topics that was like highly contested or that a lot of people liked or a lot of people didn't like. And there's a whole list of those in the 2018 topics forum posts on the around the world in 52 books from 2018. So I picked one. This was things that had supernatural beings in them, and I went with this is a young adult book. Had good reviews. We'll see how it goes. Called Written in Red by Anne Bishop, and the supernatural character is a werewolf. There's other ones, but he's kind of the main character in that. A book with a number in the title or on the cover. And I opted for, it's a book called The Seventh Son, and I thought I had it in print, but I don't have it in my stack. I'm looking over on my bookshelf, which is over here. Okay, well, I'm losing my mind because I thought I had a hard copy, but the author's name is Reggie Tannehill, and it's British historical fiction. Yeah, I don't see it in my stack. Okay. Next up, week 20. I do have this one. I think y'all will remember how much I really loved the book on Jane Austen at home. This is another book by the same author, Lucy Worlsley. If Walls Could Talk, an intimate history of the home. So this is for the prompt, there's 4 in a row that are the sort of bride prompts, something old, something new, something borrowed, something blue. This is from the something old because it's basically pre 19th century. Is that right? Pre-mid 19th century. Okay, so that's what I'm using for the something old prompt. I do not have something picked out for the something new prompt. Haven't decided yet what I'm going to do, but it'll probably be like something that's been published in 2019. And since we aren't there yet, unless you have a brilliant suggestion out there, gentle watcher, reader peoples, in which case, leave me a suggestion below. I am open to those as well. Oh, and I also don't have something borrowed, but I'm thinking I'm going to borrow a book, whether it's from the library or from a friend, whatever. So that's weeks 24 and 25. 26, something blue. So I picked this fantasy book called The Daughter of Smoke and Bone. I don't know that it's officially a young adult book. The author is Laini Taylor, but let's say that it is kind of in that feel of young adult book. The main character has blue hair, so that's why I picked that one. 27, Lisa of Lisa's Stitching and Such. If you're watching this, one of the prompts is a book from the 1001 Books to Read Before You Die list. So I know you were talking about that in your most recent video. I struggle with these like books to read before you die list because I have 2 parents who were both English teachers at one point. My dad also eventually taught classics. I have a humanities degree. I've always read a lot. So, you know, I start going through them and I'm like, oh, I've read that. Oh, I've read that. Oh, I've read that. Oh, I've read that. I've read that. And not to say that I've read all 1001 books on this list, but I have read a lot of them. So one of the ones I was pleased to find is a book called, this sounds really creepy. I'm pleased to find a book that's called Veronica Decides to Die. But it looked really good. So it's by Paulo Coelho. I have other books by him on my to be read list. And although I did not have this particular one, but this was on the list. And so I thought, I'm going to give it a go. I like his writing. Let's see how I like this one. So that was week 27. Week 28 is a book that relates to something cold. And I've picked a book called Chasing the Light by Jessie Blackadder. What a great last name, Blackadder. And now this is a book that takes place, it's a murder mystery that takes place in Iceland. And it's like this sort of bleak Scandinavian type mysteries, which I like, so, okay. Next, a book published before 1950. I struggled with this a little bit because last year, I think it was, they had a similar type prompt on there that was, I think, a book written in the 19th century that you hadn't read before. So I also struggled with that, and I wound up reading one of the lesser-known Bronte sisters book called Laura, maybe? I don't actually even remember the title. It was dreary and long and did not engage me at all, although I finished it. So I wanted to look for something that I thought maybe I would be a little bit more engaged with. And so I picked a book called, it's a retelling of a fairy tale called The Snow Goose by Paul Gallico. And it's really short. It's like 100 pages. So I figure if I hate it, I'll just read it and I'll move on. Book featuring an elderly character. This one I've had on my to be read list for a while, so I was glad that I found an excuse to actually move it to the to read list in a more urgent manner. And it's a book called The History of Love by Nicole Krauss. Next, children's classic you've never read. So I struggled with this one again because my grandparents had, like, does anyone remember the Child Life books? They were like collections of short stories and poems and things. And it was sort of like you would get it, like the Encyclopedia Britannica, where you get it on a subscription. So they had all of those. they had an entire wall that was nothing but children's classics. So, I mean, all of the things like Black Beauty, Pippi Longstocking, Alice in Wonderland, all of the Little House on the Prairie books, My Friend Flicka. I don't know, just pick something. I've probably read it. So I wanted to try to do something a little different. So in this one, it's a little bit of wiggle room. It's retellings of fairy tales, right? They're kids' books, right? Classics. It's called The Starlit Wood. It is edited by Dominique Parisian and Nava, not sure how to pronounce that name, Wolf. So this is the one I'm using for that prompt. Next, another hard copy book. This is one that is a 500-page or longer book. This one qualifies because it has 857 or thereabouts. Edward Rutherford's The Rebels of Ireland. Now, I have not read the first book in the Dublin saga, which is The Princess of Ireland, but that's okay. I have this. It's on my shelf. I love his writing. I'm just going to jump right in because if I love this, I'll go back and get The Princes. But Rebels of Ireland. So this covers Cromwell, the famine, Yeats, the Easter Rising, yeah, pretty much everything up to the Irish independence. Okay, so that is week 32. Week 34 or 33 is a book you've owned for at least a year but haven't read. I'm going to tackle Neil Gaiman's Norse mythology because I've had that. I bought it on sale and have not gotten to read it, so this is the year. Next, week 34, a book with a person's name in the title. I'm going with a book called Etta by Gerald Colpan. So this book, if you know your movie history, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. Sundance is shacked up with the really pretty teacher. Her name is Etta Place. And so this is a book about, it's historical fiction, but it's about Etta Place and how she met Butch and Sundance and kind of her life before them and her life after them. Next is a book that's a psychological thriller. You might remember we had several of those this past year that I read. I picked one called The Crossing Places by Ellie Griffiths. Week 36, the NPR Best Books of the Year list. I picked a book which I actually had in my to-be-read list called Mary Coyne. The author is Marissa Silver. So Mary Coyne is the subject of one of the most famous photographs of the Great Depression and the Dust Bowl. She's a very thin, kind of drawn woman, and she's sitting with her head resting in her hand, and she's got a small child with her, and she just looks, all in. So this is the book that it's mostly history, but I think they've filled in some of the gaps that they're not sure, where she was or what she was doing during certain periods of time. But she is the subject of that famous photograph. So I thought that would be an interesting read too. Well, obviously, I thought all of these were interesting reads because if I didn't, I wouldn't have put them on the list, would I? Week 37, a book set in a school or university, and this is another fantasy, sort of young adult, Ink and Bone by Rachel Kane. Week 38, a non-traditional format, a book that is poetry, essays, or graphic novel. There was 3 or 4 other different choices. I'm going with this little book called Chance Developments by Alexander McCall Smith, who wrote, what's the detective agency? He's the author of the Ladies Detective Agency. I can't remember that full name, but anyway, what he's done is he chose 5 vintage photographs, including this one, and he wrote 5 short stories. that basically he's just telling the story in the photograph. I mean, he doesn't know that story, but he's made up a story to go with these 5 old photographs that he found. And I thought that was like a really interesting inspiration, jumping off point. So I thought I would try that and see. On to my next list here. Week 39, another Charles DeLint. This one is for a book with a strong sense of place or a setting that is brought to life by its author. And I want to read DeLint's book, The Wild Wood. I think just in general, I could have picked any of Charles DeLint's books, and he probably would have delivered on the strong sense of place, but that's the one I'm going with. A book you stumbled upon is for week 40, and I'm going to read this book called The Wonderling by Mira Bartok. And a friend of mine, my friend Victoria, she posted it as one of the books that she's just started recently and absolutely loved. So I asked her, you know, is it worth reading? And she just was like, this is a great book. It's about a fox, and the fox like can hear the mice in the walls, and it's whimsical and quirky, and it sounds like something I would like to read. So I put it on my list for this year. A book from the 2018 Goodreads Choice Awards. These just came out. There's a whole bunch of genres. It didn't have to be one that won the award, but it should be one that was like in their top. I think they have top 10. So I am a huge fan of the Alona Andrews series. I believe Magic Bites is book 1 of the Kate Daniels series, and I've read all of those, loved those. So this is her new one. It's a brand new one called Iron and Magic. So first in the series, gonna give it a shot, see how I like it. Fantasy, a little bit of supernatural in there. There's some magic, you know, kind of all my buttons. Okay, a book that contains a monster or monstrous characters. And they included all kinds of things for the list of types of monstrous characters you could pick. But I'm going with Unquiet Spirits, Whiskey, Ghosts, and Murder. I figure, how can I go wrong with ghosts? So this is the second in a series. I have not read the first, but they are Sherlock Holmes themed. This one says, Holmes finds himself the target of a deadly vendetta in London, and beautiful Scotswoman Isla Maclaren arrives at 221B with a tale of kidnapping, ghosts, and violence at her family's Grand Highland estate. So Scottish tie-in, which I figure is perfect since I'm headed to Scotland next fall. That'll be kind of a fun, you know, light tie-in. Week 43, related to STEM, so science, technology, engineering, or math. And I am going to read a book by the author Jennifer Shivarini called Enchantress of Numbers, which is a book about Ida Lovelace, who is the woman in the early 19th century who basically developed the concepts that built today's modern computers. I've been interested in her for a long time. This is kind of the first one that I've seen that's a historical fiction, but plays heavily on her life, so I thought that would be fun to read. A book related to a TV show or movie, or things that are of the same era or topic or genre of a TV show or movie you enjoyed. So I love history stuff. I found a great book called 1066, The Hidden History in the Bayeux Tapestry by Andrew Bridge Ford. It's got some needlework information in it. It's got some history in it. It's got people riding horses in it. I figured that would be a good choice. Multi-generational saga. I'm going to be reading The Swan Thieves by Elizabeth Kostova. Now, I read The Historian either at the end of last year or the beginning of this year. I can't remember which. Enjoyed that one. It's, you know, kind of gothic and a little bit creepy. So the quick version is, this novel takes us on a journey into the lives of the women left behind by the renowned painter Robert Oliver. So it starts off with one of his paintings being knifed in a gallery, and it kind of follows back the mystery of who the attacker of the painting was and how the painting is related to the women in this artist's life. Book with a mostly black cover. I'm picking Witches of New York by Amy McKay. Now, it's not really all black, but it's close enough, and I had it on the shelf, so yeah, I'm going to read it. New York City in the spring of 1880 is a place alive with wonder and curiosity. Seances are the entertainment of choice in exclusive social circles, and many enterprising women find work as mediums. So it talks about that whole movement of the resurrectionists and the seances and, you know, people who were basically con artists as well as perhaps people who have real powers. Okay. A book related to food. I've opted for this one, a book by Han Kang. It's been translated from, I believe it's Korean into English, called The Vegetarian. And it's not like a book on cooking. It maybe is not going to be something I enjoy, but it's enough outside my comfort zone. I thought I would try it. I'm just going to try it. If you're interested, you can read the link below and see if it maybe is your cup of tea. A book that was the finalist or winner for the National Book Award. I'm going with a book called The Weight of Ink by Rachel Kadish. Week 49 is a book in which the book is set in the Far East, or the author is from the Far East. And that's the book, I chose a book called Temple of a Thousand Faces by John Shores. Week 50, a book that includes a journey. This is a book called The Woodwife, and the author is Terry Windling, who I really like her writing. But this one is also set in the American Southwest, or part of the story takes place in the American Southwest, and I thought that would be fun to read. I like to read books about where I live. So the last 2 weeks, week 51 and week 52, I don't have a book selected for yet. Week 51 is a book that was published in 2019, so obviously since it's December of 2018, I don't have any books to choose from yet, but it's at the end of the year, so you know, I can fill that in as I go. And the other for week 52 is a book with a weird or intriguing title. I think that could be almost anything, so I will wait and see, or gentle viewers, suggest me something that you think I might like. So that's it. That was, wow, 40 minutes that I talked a lot about books. Again, I'm going to link everything below so you guys can toddle off and read more on the Goodreads site about the books that I've chosen. I just thought that would maybe be quicker than me trying to read a synopsis of everything to y'all. I will share with you really quick that I have found these great little booklets. They are from a vendor called Yellow Paper House. Here's their information. They're online. They do also have an Etsy store, but their online store has a lot more choices. So they are books that fit the traveler's notebook that I have. And what they are is they're basically like blank reader review pages. And yes, I know you could fill out a lot of this stuff on Goodreads, but you know, a lot of the time, like I'm reading something in bed, I can just grab my journal and jot stuff down. So it's basic information like title, author, year published, number of pages, sort of general genre. Then it gives you a place to rate it. It gives you a place to put the book summary if you're so inclined, any quotes that you might find interesting, and just kind of, you know, general thoughts. Was it good, bad, indifferent? Would you recommend it? Was it, you know, whatever. So I've set up a page for each week with the number up here and then the title and author filled in. I'll fill in the rest as I go. This is where the topics are, so I know where they are. And I also went through, so like here, if I have a K, it means I have it on my Kindle. And I have HC for hard copy. So that's how I knew I could pull all those hard copies that we went through. So it took me 2 books to get through all 52 because I think they have 40 pages in them. But anyway, if you're interested, they're like $5 or $6 a pop. They're not super expensive. They have other Traveler's Notebook fillers, inserts. That's the word I'm looking for. Inserts. So if you love these, you can go that route. Anyway, if you are on Goodreads, I am there as well. I will put a link to my account. Would love to friend you over there if you have an account as well. I am Bunny Spinner over there. I think that's it for this. I hope you guys have enjoyed that. Again, if you've got some suggestions, either for the weeks that I am missing something to slot in, or just a topic where you're like, wow, this is the greatest book that you should read for this, please let me know, because if I need it as a backup, I can use it this year, or I'll slot it in as one of my extra slots if I get through everything this year again. Yeah, so I'm really looking forward to it. I love the planning aspect of it. I am so excited to read some books that I've either wanted to read for a while or just, weren't even on my radar. So I'm hoping that 2019 will be as much fun as the last 4 years have been. Yeah, and if you have any questions about any of the books that I've talked about or any other things that I've read, please, just hit me up, either a comment below, or you can always message me as well. What's the easiest way to do that? You could message me through Goodreads. That'd probably be easy. Otherwise, as you know, I will combine my reading and book information in with my normal craft type podcasts. So as I read through stuff, look for those there, and I will keep you guys up to date. One thing I will mention is, while they've given you like a week, the topics in a certain order, 1 through 52 for the whole year, by no means do you have to, and I probably will not, read everything exactly in the order. Sometimes I'll find a book at the library and I'll put a hold on it because we don't have the copy and I'm waiting for it. So I'll read something else in the meantime, or, my dad's like, oh, I have a copy of that, I'll send it to you, but I don't want to wait the week for it to get here with the mail. So I start something else. But, if that's something that was preventing you from starting this challenge because you felt like you had to pick every week, you had to read the book that they listed, not to worry, just read them as you want. I've done that for years and it's been great and it's been fine. And sometimes it's fun to just jump around and be like, yeah, I feel like reading that, so I'm going to read that this week. I will say, and ask me how I know, don't leave the over 500 page book to read as your very last one. That winds up being a struggle to get through if you do it in that particular way. So word to the wise. Anyway, hope you guys have enjoyed me rambling on for almost 45 minutes about books. Yeah, thanks for all the interest, and I will talk to you guys soon. Take care. Bye.